Hello, my name is Teresa Stack. I'm an assistant professor at Montana Technological University, and I've been practicing ergonomics for close to 25 years. This learning unit will cover the basics of ergonomics, and one way to frame ourselves when we begin this learning unit is to take a look at this task and think about which body part this person may experience pain or discomfort at the end of the day due to the task that they're performing. And so if we start to take a look at this, we could think about where this person might start to feel some aches and pains. And now, what are the physical workplace risk factors that this person's exposed to that is causing that discomfort? And that's one way we frame ourselves in ergonomics. This learning unit covers Chapter 2 of our textbook, Occupational Ergonomics, a Practical Approach.
By the end of this learning unit, you'll be able to define the term ergonomics as well as work-related musculoskeletal disorders. You'll be able to list and describe the physical workplace risk factors, as well as contributing risk factors, both personal and workplace, that contribute to but do not cause the development of work-related musculoskeletal disorders. You should be able to understand the difference between the two terms, ergonomics and human factors, and the differences between physical workplace risk factors and contributing workplace risk factors. And here again is an example of a task which has the potential to cause a work-related musculoskeletal disorder. Ergonomics has traditionally dealt with fitting the workstation to the worker, but there's a new line of physical conditioning in which we try to adapt the worker to the work. And you may have heard of the term an industrial athlete. This is used in a number of different industries. You've seen this in the Ford video as the introduction, and it's also a concept that's used at Boeing. And so when workers experience musculoskeletal signs and symptoms of developing a musculoskeletal disorder, so just pain or discomfort, they can be brought to an industrial athlete who will then provide job conditioning that's specific to their potential position. So, for example, if you have somebody who's welding and they're bent over all day long and hunched over, you may give them exercises to strengthen their chest or their pectoral muscles. And this is just a different way of looking at the way ergonomics and total worker health is being used to protect people from developing work-related musculoskeletal disorders. Ergonomics, the term, is derived from two Greek words, ergon meaning work and nomos meaning the principle or laws. And so ergonomics is the science of work. The definition from Grandin, who seems to be one of the founding fathers of ergonomics is essentially fitting the workplace to the worker. The better the fit, the higher the level of safety and worker efficiency. So when we're able to put ergonomic solutions in place, we're usually able to make the workplace more efficient because we're reducing things like wasted motions to pick something up because we brought the work closer to the worker. And so there's this trade-off with ergonomics, and we're able to improve not only the environment in which people work, but also increase the productivity. And that's usually the way we're able to sell this somewhat to management. Occupational ergonomics today seeks to decrease injury while enhancing performance. In the 19th century, Frederick Taylor pioneered the scientific method, which proposed a way to find the optimal method of carrying out a given task by maximizing human performance. Taylor found, for example, you can triple the amount of coal workers were shoveling by incrementally reducing the size and weight of the coal or ore in the shovels until the fastest shoveling rate was reached, thus literally matching the task and tools to the worker. Frank and Lillian Gilbert expanded on Taylor's methods in the 19th century to develop time motion studies. They aimed to improve efficiency by eliminating unnecessary steps and actions. By applying this approach, the Gilberts reduced the number of motions in bricklaying from 18 to 15. then from 15 to 4.5, allowing bricklayers to increase their productivity from 120 bricks to 350 bricks an hour. The elimination of the needless repetitive motions and extended reaches are methods of controlling work-related musculoskeletal disorder, which occurs by cumulative exposure to the same muscle groups. Henry Ford was also concerned with efficiency of motion to decrease the cost of making an automobile while increasing its quality. Henry Ford stated, "The work must be brought to the man waist high. No worker must ever have to stoop to attach a wheel, a bolt, a screw, or anything else to the moving chassis." There, Henry Ford realized that all these wasted motions were wasting time, and therefore he can increase efficiency by decreasing these wasted motions. So if we fast forward a little bit, starting in the mid-1960s, the discipline grew and developed. And there we can see really a distinction between ergonomics and human factors. Human factors deals with decision making. How do people integrate information across controls and displays, as you see at this nuclear power plant? Ergonomics like to say that ergonomics deals with the waist down, the physical attributes of the work that cause the worker to develop work-related musculoskeletal disorders, and how to change the physical attributes of the work to prevent the disease or the disability from occurring. Where human factors deals with the head up, decision-making, processing, and preventing errors. So in the mid-1960s, the discipline continued to grow in different areas and expanded into computer hardware as well as computer software in the 1970s, nuclear power plants and weaponry in the 1980s, and then on to internet and automation in the 1990s. And now we were looking at adaptive technology in the 2000s. And this is all areas in which human factors and ergonomics comes together. Professions that use human factors and ergonomics besides industrial engineers, occupational medicine folks, industrial hygienists, and safety professionals include architect, occupational therapist, physical therapists, designers, as well as insurance loss control specialist. So there's your quick background on the history of ergonomics. Remember, it's the science of work, and the goal is to reduce the physical strain and sprain to the workers by matching the workplace to the workers' capabilities and limitations. So ergonomics is fitting the workplace to the worker. The better this fit, the higher the level of safety, efficiency, and worker comfort. Ergonomics seeks to prevent work-related musculoskeletal disorders. Musculoskeletal disorders occur slowly over time due to repeated trauma to the soft tissues. That's the muscles, the tendons, the ligaments, and the cartilage, as well as the nervous system. They are not usually caused by acute trauma. Work-related musculoskeletal disorders are musculoskeletal disorders that are caused or aggravated by the work method. And depending on the state that you live in, this can be defined somewhat differently. For example, in the state of Montana, we call them cumulative trauma disorders instead of work-related musculoskeletal disorders. Here the term WMSDs is used because that's the term that OSHA uses and it's consistent in the literature. And I thought I'd show you an example of what a work-related musculoskeletal disorder can look like. So here you can see the bone spurs that developed in my husband's elbow, as well as this area in here, which is a built-up of a bunch of arthritis in this area. So some historic work-related musculoskeletal disorders and what we would call them today. So Carpenter's elbow is cubital tunnel syndrome. Carpet layer's knee is patella bursitis. Blackberry thumb would be de Quervain's disease. And tech neck or iPad neck is really damage to the cervical spine. So as we change over time and we bring technology in to our lives, or we change the way we do things, then we change the type of musculoskeletal disorders that are occurring, whether it is at work or at home. And certainly our younger population has far more screen time, which can cause problems in their cervical neck as well as their upper shoulders while their bodies are still developing. So that was the introduction, and now we're getting into looking at the physical workplace risk factors. So physical workplace risk factors must occur in combination to cause injury. And when we think about physical workplace risk factors, many times you'll think of noise, and vibration is the same as noise, except you can't hear vibration, you can feel it. Also, vibration exposure is triaxial, that's in 3 different directions, so it's something you're familiar with. Then you have posture, both awkward posture and static posture. Compression, which is directly applied to the surface of the skin. You have force, which is the muscle exertion as well as an external force if you're picking something up. Repetition and vibration. So these are our physical workplace risk factors. And if we increase the magnitude of these risk factors, or if these risk factors occur in combination, or if we increase the duration of these risk factors, then we're increasing the probability that somebody's going to develop a work-related musculoskeletal disorder. So other factors which contribute to but do not cause work-related musculoskeletal disorders. They can be personal or they can be workplace. So they contribute to but they do not cause. So temperature is one of them, as well as workplace or stress, age and gender, hobbies, previous conditions, medical conditioning, smoking, as well as fatigue. So we're going to cover these in a little bit more detail later. This is just the introduction so that you really understand the difference between the physical workplace risk factors that when they occur in combination cause or contribute to the development of a work-related musculoskeletal disorder. Other factors that contribute to but do not cause a work-related musculoskeletal disorder are both personal factors such as your age or your gender, as well as other workplace factors such as temperature or the work pace of the job. So here's a video of a gentleman who crawls inside of the H-53 helicopter to do repair work inside of a fuel cell. He crawls in. He was just telling the woman there that the hardest part is crawling in and out. So once he gets in, he likes to stay there. She was asking him how come he doesn't take a break. So what physical workplace risk factors do you believe can be occurring with this task of the gentleman crawling inside of a small fuel cell, not having a cushion to sit on or kneel on, and using different types of manual as well as powered hand tools? So if we're going to talk about posture, first let's define the neutral posture. So one way to look at the neutral posture is you can look at the body's landmarks. So if I'm in my neutral posture, my ears are over my shoulders are over my elbows, or my elbows under my shoulder is over my hip, my elbow's in line with my hip is over my knee, and my knee is over my ankle. And you are actually in the karate chop position. The more open the angle, blood can flow, nerves can conduct. The more closed the angle, you're pinching that off. So this is your neutral posture. When you're in the neutral posture, you're the strongest, you're the fastest, you're the most efficient, and you can go the longest period of time because your nerves can conduct, your blood can flow. When you're in an awkward posture, so now I'm in an awkward wrist posture, and I'm doing a muscle contraction, my tendon is going over that bone and it's rubbing on top of that, which is creating friction. Also, when I'm in an awkward posture, my muscles have to contract just to hold me there. And when I get to that extreme range of motion, my muscles lose that contractile ability. So the neutral posture is the best posture for speed, control, efficiency, and people can also perform their job the longest when they're in the neutral posture. Ergonomists love the neutral posture. So we look at our hand postures a lot. So one way to be able to look at this is when you're in the neutral posture, your middle knuckle is right in the middle of your wrist. And you're the strongest when you're in the neutral posture. When I put myself in flexion, and you can even feel that, my muscles can't contract as efficiently as they would, and this decreases the amount of force that I could apply by 25% less strong. When I'm in extension, this also decreases the amount of force that I could apply by between 30 and 50% when you're in extension. And then our arm radiates this way, so this is radial deviation as well as ulnar deviation. And anytime you're not in the neutral posture, you can't exert as much strength. And that's exactly the same for your bicep or your shoulder. When you're in the neutral posture, you can exert the most force. But when you start to put yourself in an awkward posture, it's just having your shoulders elevated or up in the air, then you can't exert as much force. And so we want people to exert as much force as possible because they have less internal muscle force. So for example, if I had to squeeze that hand tool with 5 pounds of force, it'd be much easier for me to do it this way. I'd have far less muscle contraction than if I had to go around the corner and I was this way. Still, I'd have to squeeze here with 5 pounds of force, but I'd be using more internal muscle force. So ergonomists like the neutral posture, and we really pay attention to the hands because you can see how just changing that just a little bit changes that deviation. So awkward postures are postures that are outside of neutral. They're unsupported, they can stretch the physical limits, compress nerves, irritate tendons, and of course lead to muscular fatigue. So a very simple solution to change an awkward posture is to raise the tool or the part that people are working on up to elbow height so they don't have to bend forward or deviate. Also, orienting the work towards the worker is another way to change the posture from awkward to neutral. So there's an entire learning unit on computer workstations, but the seated neutral posture is very similar to the standing neutral posture, except you want your hips slightly higher than your knees. So that angle between your torso and your knees needs to be open, and this helps you increase the curvature in your lower back. So if you sit with your knees higher than your hips, and you can go ahead and give this a try, you will flatten the curve in your lower back. If you sit with your hips slightly higher than your knees, you'll accentuate that curve in your lower back, which is the natural spinal posture, and then you're able to sit for longer periods of time. But either way, sitting for long periods of time causes compression in your lower back, and we'll take a closer look at that when we look at biomechanics and spinal anatomy. So which posture is the best posture? Well, the next posture is the best posture, because any posture that you've been in for too long creates static loading of the joints, as well as a buildup of lactic acid and a change of pH in the muscles. So static postures are positions that workers must hold for long periods of time, can reduce blood flow, as well as have insufficient recovery periods. And so our example here, you can see by just having that awkward position and craning your head forward, you're putting more force on your thoracic area than if you can keep your ears up above your shoulders, or as close to up above your shoulders as possible. So here you have 12 pounds of force on your neck, and here you have 42 pounds of force on your neck just because of the weight of your head being held further away from your spine. And when you're in positions like this, actually the weight of your torso itself causes forces on your back, as well as you have that extension or flexion of the spine, and then you're unable to efficiently contract your gut and hold your internal organs back into place that aren't held in by your rib cage when you're in this posture. So when you're in this upright position, you're able to contract your muscles. But the point of this slide is any posture that you hold for too long is considered a posture that wouldn't be preventative. So the next posture is the best posture. We have awkward postures and we have static postures. Repetition is performing the same task over and over again. Repetition does not allow time for rest. It can cause irritation as well as a loss of synovial fluid in your tendons. And so if you don't have that chance for your body to rest and recover, then repetition can become a problem, especially when repetition is combined with something else, as you see here, such as high hand forces. So this person is refurbishing leads that are used in the medical profession. They're removing the sticky contact using a lot of force and a pinch grip. A pinch grip, you have to use more force than in a power grip. And so you not only have the repetition, but you have the high hand forces. And you can see some deviations, maybe some awkward hand positions as well. So force is a strong physical contraction, and this can be due to weight, friction, or posture, and it can stress those soft tissues to either beyond their capability and lead to strain or sprain, or over time have that cumulative effect where maybe a tendon cannot go back to its resting shape anymore, or a ligament can't go back to its resting shape anymore because you've overstretched it over time and it loses that pliability. And then you just have complete, you also have muscle fatigue that can happen as well. But when you think about force, one thing to kind of get your head around is it's not only the weight of the object, but it's where you hold it. And so we're the strongest when we are holding things within our strike zone. So we're in our neutral posture. Our strike zone is between shoulders and knuckles. So if I keep my lifting task between my shoulders and my knuckles, I can keep my back in a pretty upright position, meaning my spine is the strongest. It can contract those core muscles with all that force. As soon as I go below my knuckles, I bend over, and now I have to pick up the weight of my torso, and I'm putting more loading on my lower back. It's much harder for me to contract my abdomen muscles when I bend over that way. As well as when you go over your shoulders, you have to lean back and you're in extension. And you're always weaker in extension than you are in flexion. So if you want to have manual materials handling tasks, all the heavy stuff is here between the knuckles and the shoulders. You have the lighter stuff above somebody's head because you don't want it to drop on their head. And then stuff that's moderate weight can be below the knuckles. So this is an example of how you can practically use what we're learning about the human body and forces to be able to put solutions in place. Compression or contact stress is a concentrated force on a small area that typically reduces blood flow. One of the most common sources is when you have a sharp, hard desk edge compressing the forearm. The forearm is a delicate area with all those nerves and tendons running close to the surface of the skin, and compression of this area can impede or restrict nerve conduction as well as irritate a tendon and prevent blood flow within itself. And so the example that you can see here, the worker is resting their arm on something that's really sharp because they need to stabilize their hand. They're doing really precision work. And we put a pad in place so that put a pad in place so that the surface is padded, and then that protects the forearm, as well as an anvil that helped to angle the work towards the worker, and it reduced somewhat that awkward wrist position. So here you can see the awkward position versus the neutral position. So our next physical workplace risk factor is vibration. And vibration is tough to define, although we all know what it is, but it results in the rapid back and forth motion. And vibration actually occurs in three planes, the X, Y, and Z plane. And so single point vibration or hand-arm vibration is when you're exposed to just that, a single point. Maybe it's the hand because you're working with a hand tool, versus full body vibration results primarily from the transmission of a vehicle or something that's moving. Although one time I was inside of a hydroelectric dam and the floor was vibrating and people had full body vibration. And so vibration is one of the most difficult ones to combat, and it's actually quite deteriorative to the human body because of the way your body responds to it, although we'll look at that in a little bit more detail when we talk about hand tools and vibration. So if you can't change the vibration associated with the task because of the tools, some ways that you can improve the characteristics of the task would be to get somebody in a neutral posture, or to provide gloves that would keep the worker's hands warm, make sure the tool is well balanced and the bits are sharp. And this doesn't change the vibration all that much, but it can change the transmission into the worker's hands.
And again. We lost an engine! Everybody okay? Is everybody okay? We lost two engines. Engine shut down. We hit so hard.
Coming 90 degrees of port, decrease of 20%.
Watching there is a video of people on the MK5, which is a fast craft that brings Seabees through the water. And those were all the impact forces of going across the chop in the water. And the seats were previously directly mounted to the vessel, and that's what was causing that impact. Now that we've watched the intervention, let's watch the pre-intervention again and look at the vibration and impact these sailors are exposed to.
There was a good shot. There was another good shot. I bottomed the seat out on both of those. I'm going to give it a little bit more pressure now. That hurt. Oh, God!
So we covered our physical workplace risk factors: vibration, posture, force, compression, and repetition. And now we're looking at other factors that contribute to but do not necessarily cause the development of a work-related musculoskeletal disorder. So we have one of the contributing factors is temperature extreme. So when it's really hot, people get dehydrated, they burn their calories at a higher rate, as well as if they're wearing personal protective equipment, it can lead to fatigue, or they have to fight using the equipment, burn more calories. When people are working in cold environments, you have to burn a lot of calories to just stay warm. As well as you have a decrease in your tactile ability. You can't feel things as well. So workers will tend to grip harder just because they're not able to feel the tool that they're grasping onto. Also, duration is another contributing factor. So duration by itself can't cause a condition, but certainly when it's combined with force or repetition, it can absolutely contribute to it, because it's the dose that makes the poison, and so therefore it's the duration or the time period that can lead to the injury. So you might be able to hold an awkward posture for 15 or 20 minutes, but when it's 8 hours, then it's the duration that's leading to the probability of that injury. And that goes to inadequate recovery. So if we have the chance to rest, our muscles can supply it's our veins that pull the spent blood up from our extremities and back to our hearts. So by moving, the veins open and close, and it brings that blood to our heart, and it can become reoxygenated. and we need that reoxygenation to stave off the effects of our metabolism when we're burning our calories, and it's leading to muscle fatigue, and you actually have a change in pH of your muscles. And so you can take activity breaks. So that means if you have a very sedentary task, you need to get up and walk around to get the blood flowing and stretch so things don't become stiff and compressed. Or if you have a very dynamic task, then you can stretch or flex before the job begins and then throughout the day to allow that flexibility, because a stiff muscle is more likely to be injured than a flexible muscle. As well as being able to take a break. You can bring people back down from fatigue to a more level state, right? So we talked a lot about work-related musculoskeletal disorders, and so here's are some signs and symptoms of musculoskeletal disorders. Pain, shooting pain, stabbing pain, inflammation, difficulty moving, loss of grip strength, pain that wakes you up in the middle of night. These are all signs or symptoms of the development of a work-related musculoskeletal disorder. For sure, if you have pain or discomfort that wakes you up in the middle of the night or does not go back to zero, or you can't recover after rest, so it's expected, even the ACGIH has this written in their documentation, as well as OSHA, that workers will have some feeling of fatigue, some discomfort at the end of the day. But if they can come back refreshed in the morning and not have that carryover effect, then they're not likely to develop a work-related musculoskeletal disorder. And that's why we have the triangle here as an example. You can have a lot of people who have fatigue, and a smaller percentage of them will have discomfort. So fatigue you can usually shake off by not doing what you're doing, where discomfort, it'll stay off after you rest for a period of time. So if I feel fatigued working at my desk, I could get up and walk around, but if I feel discomfort, that may not go away until I go home and actually rest. And so that distinction between discomfort and pain is really personal, but pain is described as sensations which stop you from doing your normal activities. So if I go home and I don't do my yoga because of my pain, that's different than discomfort. Also, people who are in pain tend to do something to alleviate the pain besides not having activity, such as taking over-the-counter medication, maybe seeing a chiropractor, an inversion table. And with musculoskeletal disorders, because they're cumulative in nature, if we can stop them at the fatigue or the discomfort stage, or even the pain stage, it may not lead to that injury. But once you get that injury and you work through it, you don't change your physical workplace risk factors, that's when the disability occurs. And here's another example of my husband. He had 2 spinal fusions. This is the first one, which is the rear approach. And you can see absolutely how L4 has slid forward off of L5. These are screws that were put into his vertebrae as well as rods. And the theory there was that this area would self-fuse together, and that would prevent any further pain or discomfort. Although this surgery didn't work and they had to flip him over and put him in the front. That's sometimes how the way it goes. And so what are the benefits of applying ergonomic principles? Well, certainly we have improved health and safety of our workforce, improved morale, reduced work-related musculoskeletal disorders, improved comfort, as well as increased productivity plenty of times. And then we reduce those costs associated with finding somebody, turnover, or paying overtime. And so always remember that training is definitely part of the intervention. It's one thing to give people a piece of equipment and not tell them how it can be used. And so I hope you have enjoyed the beginning presentation, the basics of ergonomics. The things to remember are, what are the physical workplace risk factors? What are the contributing workplace risk factors? how do we define a work-related musculoskeletal disorder, and hopefully you can see some ways that you can put simple interventions in place to prevent the development of a work-related musculoskeletal disorder. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at any time, and have a splendid day.